You are indeed, sir. Welcome to the show. How can we help you?
Thanks for having me. My question is for Sean.
Hi there.
Hello. If I'm not wrong in assuming you reject theory of evolution, right?
Depends what you mean by evolution.
Evolution in the sense that actual biologists define it. Like,
you'll have to be more specific,
humans,
sir.
Like, do you accept that humans...
What they teach at Harvard, MIT, and Yale.
If you mean the common descent of all living life forms by way of mutation, adaptation, and natural selection...
That is evolution.
I do not believe in the common descent of all life forms.
You've got to include other factors in there, like sexual selection and genetic drift, but whatever.
So,
yes.
All right, but let Mike carry on with his question.
All right, my question is, if you reject evolution, then how can you go to a hospital and accept the medicine that the doctor prescribes to you? I mean, they're both based on the same biochemistry. They're both precisely based on the same principles. If you reject one, you cannot accept the other. It's hypocrisy.
Okay, so let's deal with that. I do believe in genetic drift. I believe in mutation, adaptation, and natural selection. I do not believe, however, that those mechanisms can account for the entire spectrum of life. So, okay.
Then, if I'm wrong in assuming you went to a college?
I'm in a university right now. I'm speaking to you from one.
And do you have a degree in biology?
I do not.
Then how dare you question biology, evolution, medicine, when you don't...
Do you have a degree? Or excuse me,
I don't.
Okay,
I
so
don't,
how dare you?
I know.
How dare you lecture me?
I've got several. If you want to play that game, you can divert it this way, Sean.
He committed a fallacy. He's saying that I can't. It's an appeal to authority.
We're not interested in the fallacies. We're interested in whether it's actually.
What do you mean you're not interested in the fallacies? If he's coming at me with an argument that's utterly fallacious, it should be pointed out.
Sure,
so that
whether something is a fallacy and whether it's right or wrong are two separate things.
It's wrong.
For instance, you can say something is an argument from authority fallacy when you say, "Do you want to go for do you want to go to a doctor?" Right. However, by the inductive reasoning, if you're going to put your money anywhere, you go for the argument for authority when you actually say, "I want to go to see a doctor for medical treatment." You don't say,
that's another fallacy, but okay, if you don't want me to point out the fallacies and logic going on here, let's just respond to the objection. The objection is this. If I don't have a degree in biology, I have to believe everything that the biologists tell me because I'm too stupid to know what they're talking about.
No, but it's a good way to say it. It's a good way to judge your actions, is you go by what people who are professionals in those fields do. This is why you trust a car mechanic for mechanical advice, and you don't sort of say, well, everyone has an opinion on this, therefore all opinions are equally valid. You actually temper it by their experience. And given that there is... whatever, 6 billion people on this world, and the cream of those have actually assimilated the data and actually developed this theory of evolution, which is the best explanative model that we have of biology, is why if you don't know anything about it, that's inductively the best way to go.
Hey, Mike, I have a question for you.
Can I hop in?
Can Mike hear me?
Yeah.
Let's please just take it one at a time. Don wanted to say something, and then we'll go back to Mike. So we'll go back to you, Sean, for your question to Mike. But Don first, then back to you, Sean, then Mike. Okay?
Apologies again for the audio. My sound card keeps crashing. I have no clue why it's doing it. But I mean, Sean, I don't think that you really put your money where your mouth is in the sense of, let's say that a hobo wanted to operate on your mother, and you could say, oh, well, you know what? Just because he didn't go to med school or anything like that, does that mean that he can't know how to perform, cardiac surgery because he didn't go to med school? I mean, I don't think that you would be so eager to do that. I mean, in my opinion, it seems after listening to your arguments and watching your videos, all of your misconceptions are based on a poor backbone and on a poor understanding of biology. It's essentially, your arguments are essentially equivocal of saying, well, if the Earth is round, then why don't all the Chinese people fall off the bottom? I mean, it's based on a poor understanding of the subject in the beginning, and that leads you to your conclusions. I mean, because, yeah, that sounds like a really good argument if you know nothing about gravity.
Okay. Mike, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Do you have a degree in theology?
I do not.
I do.
And that's why I don't criticize theology. Sure, and I never said he doesn't. I simply said that, all right, here's I'll try to make my point clear this time. All biological systems evolve, and so do disease-causing organisms, viruses, bacteria. So, I mean,
Mike,
sure,
here's what happened here. You believe that adaptation, mutation, natural selection, these mechanisms that are a fact, we observe them, we know they're true, you believe that evolution, the theory of evolution, has an exclusive claim on them. And so in medical studies, when these principles are applied to create antiviruses or antibacterial agents, these things, creationists are totally okay with them. And I can even give you a scenario, if you'd like, for a demonstration where these things are completely compatible with a creation scenario.
So evolution is compatible with creation scenario when the God creates humans in his image, when we know he doesn't. We know that humans evolve from
I didn't
primates.
say that evolution and creation are compatible. I said that the mechanisms that are part of the evolution theory are actually able to exist apart from the full evolution theory. So that is to say...
I would actually disagree with you there. I mean, what you're basically saying is that you believe that you could walk 10 feet because, you believe that the mechanisms work and all that, but you're unwilling to accept the ramifications of what happens if you keep walking. It's like saying that, yes, I believe that I can walk to my door, but walking, 100 yards, that's just impossible. I mean,
no, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
No, because you're not accepting the ramifications of those mechanisms. You acknowledge the mechanisms, but you're not acknowledging
what I'm saying is the mechanisms have limits. No, I'm saying the mechanisms have demonstrable limits.
There are demonstrable limits. Yeah, what?
Yes.
I'd like to hear this.
And what are the demonstrable limits, and what is their biochemical explanation? We have a very good understanding of how single-site mutation, frame shift, gene duplication, and the such like can actually result in biological diversity. And these are the things that you would say attribute to the parts of evolution that you accept.
Okay,
however, the exact same mechanism, what are the demonstrable limits of that which you claim exist?
Okay, this works in two ways. The limits go backwards and they go forwards. So can I create sort of a skeptical scenario, a hypothetical? Can you guys hear me?
Just do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so imagine that science reaches a point where we're able to actually just create life to any degree of complexity. So we create, and in this hypothetical scenario, I want you to imagine that birds never existed, the flying things. Let's say there was never any birds on the planet. We invent the idea of the bird, and we have the full ability to create any bird from scratch. So they have no ancestral history. We literally just create them in the lab. You with me so far? I'll take that as a yes.
Finish the point.
All right, so we create some penguins, some finches, and some woodpeckers. Now, these do not share a common ancestor. They have an absolute distinct creation. I use creation not in the divine sense, but just in the lab. So they don't share a common ancestor, so the common descent of these birds, in this case, is not true. They do not share a common ancestry. Now, for the sake of argument, let's say that they're interfertile, so they can begin breeding with each other and start swapping traits in and out, and maybe even we get like a wood penguin or a pecker finch or whatever, something really interesting. So we start seeing these traits getting swapped around and a bunch of divergence. Now, they still remain birds, and they don't share a common ancestor. And if we look in the fossil record, we'll even see them sort of blending in and out of each other because of their interbreeding. But evolution in this case is false.
I'm not quite sure how that actually... You didn't explain how the mechanisms of gene duplication and so forth, how those are limited. What are the... You said there are demonstrable limits to these things.
Well, like I said, it works two ways.
Story.
I said it works two ways. The first way is backwards in that your understanding of these mutations, adaptations, natural selections do not guarantee you the certainty of a common descent. There could have been an act of creation in the past, and then these mechanisms kicked in after the fact. So that's a limitation backwards. You're limited to making these types of conclusions that the common descent is true based on the mutations, natural selection, and all those things. That's backwards. That's one way. The other way looks forward and says that based on the mutations, adaptations, gene drift, and all those things that we see, we never see anything that can account for the emergence of the attributes that we do see in life forms. And I can just give you a random example. I'd be happy to talk about Darwin's fishes.
But Sean, those are exactly what you do see. Those are the attributes of evolution you say that you accept, the ones that you can see over our lifetime.
What I'm saying is that based on your observations of these mechanisms, you cannot demonstrate that they are themselves proof of evolution, which is the common descent of all man. Or not all men, sorry, all life forms.
But you could still, even if these birds were hybridizing and things like that, what you could do is, let's say that a swallow and a woodpecker got together and their offspring were swallow peckers. You could still go and take them if you still have the original parents, and based on their genes, based on, it's the same way that DNA paternity tests work. I mean, I know I'm involved in several of those right now, and they work. I mean, it's the same fundamental principle.
But I don't disagree with the interbreeding of birds or that any of these mechanisms that you say exist. I agree with all of them.
Right, so it all boils down to
that it can be traced back, though. I mean, it can still all be traced back. I mean, there are still the molecular vestiges that are left in our DNA that make it traceable. That's why, combined with all the other evidence, all the other independent evidence, that you see this, it all comes together and points clearly to common descent. I mean, it's a basis of paternity test. I mean, I just don't see how you can kind of deny that it can be traced back.
Well, I am denying that it can be traced back because I don't think it can go back further than the basic kinds. I don't think you can show that birds came from dinosaurs.
I'm still waiting. Sure, I'm still waiting for this mechanism that actually limits gene drift and all that sort of thing.
Sure.
Right? The mechanisms that you accept cause the sort of evolution that you do. See, you've not explained what limits those. Right?
Okay.
How does one base pair actually know not to mutate? What you're saying is there have to be parts of the genome that are impervious to these mechanisms. And as far as we know, the chemistry is very simple. It's the chemistry of deoxyribonucleic acid. There are no such segments.
Okay, so what you're saying is this: because we know, I'll talk about the limits, and I'll show you the limits and why I believe they're there.
Well, let's just go for the biochemistry. I mean, are there any sort of portions of the genome that are impervious to mutations?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, so there is no mechanism that can stop you doing single site mutations to get from any one point to any other point.
My point is that the mutations themselves are. I mean, we're going to have to talk about specific examples. We're going to have to look at what is observed. If you could give me an example of mutation you're talking about.
Well, before we go down that path, Sean, if you don't mind, Mike, the caller, actually wanted to come back.
Sure. Here's what I have to say to Sean now. There's a symmetry in the laws of nature, and the same laws that apply in space apply on Earth. And here's the point I was trying to make originally, that the same science builds your computer and invents the internet, and the same science tells you that humans evolved from primates. You reject that. You reject all science that contradicts your dogma.
There is no science that shows that man came from primates, is what I'm saying. Nothing testable.
There is no science?
Primates. We are primates. You came from your parents. Your parents are primates. You're a primate. Man came from primates.
This is what I mean. You don't have a degree in biology. You can't refute something that...
Maybe Venom would like to explain what are the differences between humans and chimps. Right, what is different? Do we have different circulatory systems? Do we have different brain chemistry? What are the differences between men and chimps? Or humans?
One difference would be we do not share a common ancestor with them.
No, that's a mechanism. That's not actually explaining how we are different.
No, it suggests
that we are identical. The only difference is that we have slightly different wiring in the brain. There are no structures in chimps that aren't in humans.
Okay,
this goes into the classification, why we are primates, why we are apes.
What's the difference between my computer and your computer?
I've got no idea.
I'm sure there are some.
Porn content.
What's that?
Porn content, he says.
Yes, mine has none, I'm sure. Anyways.
Mine too. Go ahead.
My point is, okay, so there are differences, yes, in my computer and yours, just as there are differences mechanically between a chimp and a human. What's your point?
The point is that computers are not biological self-replicating systems. Humans are. I mean, for instance, would you just say that, okay, the difference between your computer and my computer, there's similarities, this could be the same design.